Alright, so what we have here is application 6-5. We're going to be doing it as a Google Doc, as a Google Sheet. So we're going to have Excel or Google go through and create the formulas for us. What I want to point out is this very first tab of the assignment has instructions. Do not ignore the instructions. You are also going to need your textbook on page 173 to get a lot of your data. So let's go ahead and make sure you do that. It says make sure you read all the steps before completing the worksheet. Steps 1 through 14, read them all. You don't have to print them. I'll be taking you off that direction. You're going to need to click the Mastery Problem 6.5 to view the blank data file, which is right here. You're going to key your name in B2. Bam, that's B2. We take a look at using a spreadsheet. Our columns are letters and our rows are numbers. Intersection is a cell. This is B2. Okay. Key for month ended April 30th, 20XX. Use the current year in C5. So we're going to say for month ended April 30th, 2014. Okay, that's what they wanted you to type there. Key the account balances in the appropriate column in the trial balance section of the worksheet. You're going to get that from page 173 in your textbook. Use a sum function. So basically, instead of using your calculator, you're going to have to just go through and have it summed up. Notice the columns are not going to equal because we have to do something right here, and then we have to get rid of some stuff right here. We have to use our adjusting entry columns, and now what we have here, you notice you have column D is a small one here, and E is there, F and G. We're going to use our letters on here, and you're going to want to make sure you follow the directions on that. And then we need to carry over our balances from the trial balance to the right one using a formula. So we want to do that. So let's go ahead and plug in our numbers here. So I have all my numbers plugged in. Be sure that you take a look at instruction number 7 here and 8. I've already taken care of that, but I would expect you to read the directions. Right here we have to go through and use our formulas, and one of the things I'm going to be checking here is that you have used formulas correctly. So I'm going to do equals sum. Basically the word sum means that we're going to add, and I put it in a left parenthesis, and I'm just going to go ahead and highlight what I want and hit enter. I'm going to do the exact same thing here. Equals sum, highlight down, and we can see that we don't equal, so we have to go through and figure out what happened if I entered in some numbers incorrectly. I was able to go through and find my mistake, and now you can see that my debits and credits equal my trial balance. You'll want to make sure that yours do as well. Now the next thing we have to take a look at is after my trial balance equals, we're going to go through and do the adjusting entries in the appropriate line of our adjustment column and use column E for the debit amount and G for the credit amount. So what we have to go through is go through and take a look at our numbers given to us on page 174 in your textbook. It says supplies inventory $220. So what we have to do is go through and figure out for our supplies inventory exactly what needs to be on here. So if I have beginning supplies here of $855, I'm going to need to credit supplies here $635. Now this is my first adjustment, so I need to put a letter A here, and this is not something we've been able to do in Applia, but I am expecting to see it on here. And so then I'm also going to do a debit here, $635 to supplies expense, and then also letter A here. The letters just go through and correspond to say that these two line up. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for prepaid insurance. We know that in the book it says the value of prepaid insurance is $800. So we have to get the value of prepaid insurance from $1,100 to $800. So I'm going to credit prepaid insurance $300. This is my second adjusting entry, so I have to put the letter B there, and the letters will be lowercase. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing here for $300. Now I need to do the same thing here. I need to go through and do my formula. I'm going to do equals and the word sum. We always put the equal sign first because that indicates to our spreadsheet that we're doing math. And I'm highlighting the whole entire cells within my adjustment column because in case another number is added in there, I want to make sure that it is accounted for. And I, again, will be looking at these formulas to see that you use the spreadsheet, not going through and using your calculator. So now the other hard part that we need to do here is we need to go through and get our numbers from our trial balance sheet or our balance sheet. But basically, I don't want to go through and type 2829 because I want, if I change this number right here to 3,000, I want it to change here, and it's not going to based on if I just typed it in over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a formula. And my formula that I'm going to use, I'm going to do equals this. I'm going to do the same thing here. And then what's going to happen is if any of these numbers here change, so let's say this changes to 250, it automatically is going to change that number here. But we do have one problem though. If I have a debit or a credit, it's not going to account for that. So let's modify this formula just a little bit. So when we're modifying the formula, let's think about what we want to have happen here. I want to take my trial balance here as a debit, and I want to add anything here as a debit, and I want to subtract as a credit. So let's do that, but instead of on our calculator, using our Excel, our Google Sheet formula. So I'm going to take equals, then I'm going to take my trial balance cell reference, which is going to be B9, and to that I'm going to add my adjustment debit, and then I'm going to subtract my adjustment credit. Oh, I'm supposed to have add, not equals. And that will give me that formula. I'm going to do the same thing here. Plus, minus, except I have the wrong one in there again. Sorry about that. There we go. Now here's the true test. I want to add a debit and I want to subtract a credit, and that should equal 220, and it does. And again, I'm going to be looking to see that you are actually using the formulas, not just typing in the correct number, because that's the fun part about using a spreadsheet. Now, when we do the balance sheet credit, I have to do a little bit different. I have to do my credit minus my debit plus my credit, because again this is a credit, so I have to do the same thing here. Minus the debit, but plus the credit. This one is going to equal trial balance debit plus a debit minus a credit. Nothing in income summary, but I will do exactly the same thing as sales. This is a credit, so I'm going to subtract my debit but add my credit. Now, for those of you that are experienced with spreadsheets, you know we can go right here and use the fill handle and drag down. If you're not sure how to do that, you're going to want to go through and just type the formula in. So I'm going to do right here is I'm going to do my equals sum, and I'm going to highlight the whole entire column. I think I went one too far. Again, continuing on. I know I can use the fill handle, but I just want to reiterate how we use this formula. Now we can see here my debits is bigger than my credit, so I'm going to have a net loss. And how am I going to calculate that? I'm going to use a formula, and I'm going to take this minus that. Okay, so there's 50, and if it's here as a credit, it's got to go here as a debit, so I'm going to link it right there. And now my formula here should be this plus that. And I'm going to go ahead and copy my formula over. Now, here is the joy. You can see that my whole spreadsheet equals. Now, here's also the great thing about how we set it up with formulas. If I change this number right here to 3,000, everything is now changed. And you can see that things don't equal. I can change this to 250. Doesn't equal here, doesn't equal here, doesn't equal there. So by going through and setting this up with formulas, it's going to allow us to make sure we make one change and it will always roll through. One of the things I am going to do when I'm looking at your spreadsheet when you have this document done is I'm going to be using my control and the tilde key. And the tilde key is the one to the left of the number 1. And when I do that, you can see that I see your formulas that are in here instead of just the number of 150. So just be aware, if you don't have the formulas in correctly, you're going to be losing a lot of points. I'm not looking to see if you have the right numbers here because, well, we already did this assignment. I'm going to be looking to see that did you use your spreadsheet for the way that spreadsheets are supposed to be intended, because a lot of accountants do that. Okay, so again, in Google you don't need to save it, and you don't obviously need to print it. You need to turn it in Classroom.